am recording this for our attendance. And now I will take a photo. Okay, 1, 2, 3. Okay, another one. Last photo. 1, 2, 3. Okay, good morning again and welcome back to our second session for the fourth Saturday regarding the basic teacher training course on the Billings ovulation method. So the second session will be all about this one. Correctly identifying the peak day. We need to identify the peak day because if we can identify the peak day, then we can say that the cycle is a normal pattern. There is an ovulation resulting to an 11 to 16 luteal phase, and then menstruation now will commence. So we need to identify correctly the peak day. Okay, let's continue. So what is the peak? I'm now asking you regarding the definition of the peak. So these are the different answers. Peak of fertility. Take note of that. Next, how is the peak identified? So what is the peak? The peak of fertility. How is the peak identified? You know that. This is simply a review. The peak day can be identified if there is a changing, developing pattern of variable length. Take note that there should be changing. What is the meaning of changing? It starts from a sticky sensation. It will become wet. Then it will end with a slippery, changing. For example, attention, all of you, attention. For example, the first appearance of mucus is clear and the sensation is slippery. Take note that the first appearance, clear, slippery. The following day, clear, slippery. The third day, clear, slippery. Fourth day, clear, slippery. Fifth day, clear, slippery. Sixth day, clear, slippery. And then suddenly dry. From the beginning until the end, it is clear, slippery. Is it changing pattern? No. There is no peak there. There should be what? A changing pattern. The mucus must be evolving from a sticky sensation into what? Into a ending with a slippery sensation. So take note of that particular principle. So if mucus will start from a slippery and it ends with a slippery, it is not considered to be a changing pattern. Then you can now make what? You can make a conclusion, a scientific and sound conclusion. There is no peak. Even though the mucus ends with the slippery, but it begins with the slippery. At the middle, it's also slippery. No changing pattern. Okay? Variable length, meaning we cannot identify how long it will be. It can be 3 days. It can be 4. Variable length, as long as it is changing, starting from a sticky, becoming wet, and ending with a slippery sensation. The next one. The peak day is the last day of the slippery sensation. And you are all familiar with that. You know that the peak day can be identified if it is the last day of the slippery sensation. What is the meaning of the last day? Okay, look at the last one. Definite change. We can only say that it is the last day if the following day it is no longer wet. It is already dry. Or if the following day it is no longer slippery. Take note of these two things. These two things will guide us in the next slides. How can you say that the slippery sensation is already the last day if the next day, okay, there is a definite change? And what is the change? It is no longer wet, you are dry, or you are no longer slippery. take note of this too. You are no longer wet or you are no longer slippery. Now, in order for James Brown, no, Professor James Brown, to be able to make this conclusion, he studied 850,000 women and the team of Melbourne, no, in order to identify the peak day, no. But of course, the study of the cervix is given to what? Professor Eric Odeblood. So identifying the peak, the last day of slippery sensation, I repeat, there should be a changing developing pattern of variable length. It is recognized, no, in retrospect on the day of change. Retrospect on the day of change, meaning the next day, you are no longer wet, you are no longer slippery. And take note of this last one, no? During the peak day, these two are very common, and we will have a special lesson on this one. The vulva is swollen during the day of peak day. At the same time, during the peak day, there will be an appearance of a lymph node. Again, I will be discussing this in a separate PowerPoint presentation. Okay, after the peak day, no? On the fourth day, past the peak, you can now apply the peak rule, meaning intercourse is available every day at any time. Okay, let's try to look at this one. I want you to answer. What can you say about day 19? There are two things, no? After the peak day, on the next day, it is no longer wet. When you say no longer wet, it means dry. But there is another one. It is no longer slippery. So 19. What can you say about 19? 19 is no longer what? It is no longer... Anybody? Sorry. I need to switch on your microphone. Sorry. So day... Yan, you may now switch on your microphone.
Day 19 is dry, but...
Yes, it's dry, no longer wet. Very good. So 18 is the peak day. We are able to identify 18 as the peak day because 19 is no longer wet, no longer slippery. Okay? Now try to look at this one. So 22 is the beginning of the infertility. All the way to what? All the way to 30. Okay, let's continue, no? So count 3, no? After that, and on the fourth day past the peak, you can now apply the peak rule. Okay? So take note of this, but we will have another topic on this one. Ovulation is always happening during the days of during the peak day, sorry. But it can also happen. There are cases that it can happen in day 1 or day 2, which I already discussed, I think, no, last Saturday. Okay, let's move. The survival of the sperm would be 24 hours. No? From the beginning of the fourth day past the peak, it is considered to be infertile. Now, I want you to focus on this chart, no? And I want you to answer, okay? Can you please tell me where is the peak? Mucus starts on day 10, okay? Day 10, and then it continues to change. Can anybody in the class could tell me what day is the peak day? Anybody? So there's an answer. It says 14. So let's go to the definition of a peak day, no? Peak day, there should be a developing pattern, no? Look at day 10. Day 10 is tacky white. 11 cloudy. 12 cloudy. 13 clear. Wet, no? And then 14 wet, clear. So meaning slippery. On day 14, there is a developing pattern. Where is the last day of slippery sensation? Can you please tell me? Because that is the definition of peak, the last day of slippery sensation. So you need to look at the sensation slippery. What day is that?
Day 14.
Day 14. Okay, let's put a question mark. Day 14. But I want you to focus on my slide rule, no? After the peak day, it is totally dry, no? Okay, but this one is different, no? Okay, look at the symbol of number of day 15, day 16, day 17, and day 18. Look at the symbol. The symbols are in circle because there is a mucus visible, no? Tacky, creamy, tacky, creamy, tacky, creamy. That is 16 to 18. And then 15, damp, cloudy. What makes 14 a peak day? I will repeat the most important, no, consideration in identifying the peak. Peak day is the last day of slippery sensation. Why? Because the following day or the next day, it is no longer wet, no longer slippery. Is 15 slippery? Yes or no?
No.
No. If 15 is not slippery, so the last day is 14. But how come there is a discharge, a cloudy mucus, no? So there are occasions, take note, please listen, there are occasions in the cycle of the woman that after the peak day, it is not totally dry. There will be occasions in the life of the woman that after the peak day, there will be what we call mucus discharge. But the mucus are known to be what? No longer slippery. Okay? So 15 is a discharge but not slippery. The last day is 14. Look at the symbol of 15, 16, 17, and 18. I want you to focus on that. I want you to know that the symbols used by the client would be circle. Okay, now, is 15 the day of change? Yes, 15 is the day of change because 15 is no longer slippery. So what will happen now would be this. Look what will happen. There is a developing pattern leading to peak. It starts with a damp sensation, it becomes wet, and ending with the slippery on day 14. There is a developing pattern. Now, 14 is the last day of the slippery sensation. Because what? Because day 15 is no longer slippery. And because of that, look what will happen now. Look at your day 15. 15 is the start of the luteal phase. Now, attention. In the luteal phase, if it is dry, nothing is seen. What is the symbol? Vertical line or color green. But if the luteal phase has a discharge, what again is the symbol? Can anybody remember? What would be the symbol or the color in the luteal phase if there is a discharge like seminal fluid? What symbol? What yellow? Thank you, Leah. Okay, equal sign. Very good. So with that, let's try to check. What will happen now is this. Look what will happen on day 15. Day 15 now is considered to be the beginning of the luteal phase. 14 is the peak day. So we need to make changes in the symbol because the symbol of the luteal phase can be either a vertical line, dry, nothing is seen, nothing is felt, or it is dry with the discharge, or it is damp with the discharge, or wet with the discharge. So we need to change the symbol. The symbol now will be this one, equal. Peak day is day 14. 15 is the first day of the luteal. 16 is the second day of the luteal. 17 is the third day of the luteal. 18, dry tacky. That is the fourth day of the luteal. On the 18th day, the couple now can apply the peak rule. Intercourse is available every day at any time starting on day 18. So look, this is a revelation to all because since the first Saturday, we are always talking that the peak day is always the day of ovulation. Most of the time, it is the day of ovulation. But look at this one. Ovulation takes place on day 1 after the peak. Okay? I will stop. Take note, ha? Day 1 after the peak is the day of ovulation. Because I told you that ovulation might happen during day 1 or day 2 after the peak. But most of the time, during the peak day. But this one, day 1. If day 1 is the day of ovulation, the highest amount of estrogen, look, attention, that's why we studied first hormones at the beginning of the session. I mentioned earlier that the estrogen will be at its highest point before the day of ovulation. The day of ovulation is happening on day 1 after the peak day. Look at the hormones estrogen. Hormone estrogen is at its highest point where? Anybody? It is the highest where?
First day of the
Look at the color blue. The estrogen is at its highest point where? What day? Day of?
14th day.
Day of?
Peak.
Peak day. Di ba? Peak day. Because peak day here is not the day of ovulation. The day of ovulation is day 1 after the peak. And the rule says estrogen will be at its highest point before the day of ovulation. Clear? Okay, I'll stop sharing for you to understand. I want you to focus on my slide rule. No? Okay, can you see the slide rule? Now, we can only say that the day of ovulation is happening on the peak day if after the peak you are totally dry. Repeat. If you are totally dry after the peak day, nothing is seen, nothing is felt, then we can conclude that the ovulation is happening on the day of peak. But try to look at this one. Try to look at this one. After the peak, it is not totally dry. It is what? Damp, cloudy. If after the peak, it is not totally dry, then ovulation is not happening during the peak day. So it can happen during day 1 or day 2 after the peak. Clear? So let's move on. Okay, let's move. Okay, so it's written here, ovulation occurs on peak day, but it can also happen in day 1 or day 2. Now let's have this one. Okay, I want you to focus on this one. Okay, look at first the symbols. No, the symbols, we have menstrual bleeding on days 1 to 4. And then circle, shaded circles on 1 to 4, and then circle from day 5 until day 20. Now, the question is, where is the peak day? Can you please tell me? Use your microphone, please.
7.
7 is the peak day, no?
7th day.
According to Sarah, 7 also. Why? Okay, let's try to study. Because day 8, it is no longer slippery. Okay? Because day 8 is no longer slippery. Now, let's try to check. Is there a developing pattern? Yes. Look, it starts with a wet, stretchy, and then ending with a slippery. Okay? There is a developing pattern. Mucus did not start with the slippery and ending with the slippery. It ends with the lower characteristics of mucus. In this one, a wet, stretchy, and then followed by a slippery sensation. So, but mucus starts really on day 5. But the reason we cannot identify the the appearance of the mucus, it's because of the spotting, no? But mucus starts on day 5. Even in day 4 or day 3, maybe, no? It combines with the menstruation. This cycle has no BIP. Changing, developing pattern, progressing to slippery. And slippery ends on day 7. Why day 7? Because day 8, it is no longer slippery. Day 8 is already damp, cloudy. So if there is a change after 7, yes, there is a change. 8 is no longer slippery. Then there is a peak day. The peak day is day 7. If day 7 is the peak day, what do you think would be the correct symbol for day 8, day 9, day 10, day 11, day 12, etc.? Anybody from our class? Equal or yellow color. Very good. So with this, as a teacher, you need now to correct the chart of your client. You need to put an X on day 7, X because it is a peak day, and all the luteal phase. If there will be presence of discharge, make it with an equal symbol or a color yellow. Okay, peak day, day 7, and then 8, 9, 10. 1, 2, 3. Day 11 is the beginning of what? The beginning of the peak rule. Intercourse is available every day at any time starting at day 11. Last question. What do you think would be the day of ovulation? Is ovulation taking place on day 7 or day 8? Any wild guess as a teacher looking at the chart?
It might have started on day 1, number...
Maybe. Correct. 8. So, it is not possible to have the day of ovulation on peak day. Because ovulation can only happen during the peak day. If the following day, it is dry, nothing is seen. But this one is not, no? So, in this scenario, let's try to check. The day of ovulation, you are correct. It's happening on day 1. Because day 1 is not dry, nothing is seen. Similar to the slide rule that I am holding. After the X, day 1 is totally dry. But look at the luteal phase. Look at the luteal. The luteal phase is what? Dry but with mucus, sticky sensation. So the luteal phase is not totally color green. It is equal sign from the beginning of the luteal until 20. So don't be surprised if you will encounter clients wherein after the peak day, they have a discharge. No? It is normal. No? It is normal for them to have a discharge during the days of the luteal phase. If there will be discharges during the luteal phase, take note to use an equal sign as a symbol or a color yellow. Clear? So this is the day of ovulation, day 1 after the peak day. Clear? So meaning this lesson on identifying the peak day is simply telling us this one. Okay? Let me give you the scenario of our session that after the peak day, it will not be always totally dry. No? There will be occasions wherein after the peak day, you will have a discharge. And the color now will be yellow, or you may use the equal sign. So the definition of peak day is like this. It is a result of a developing pattern leading to slippery. You will be able to know that it is the last day if the following day you are no longer wet, meaning you are dry, nothing is seen, nothing is felt. Or after the peak day, there will be a discharge, but the sensation is no longer slippery. Clear? So that is the proper way of identifying the peak day. If there will be a discharge after the peak day, do not use the color green. or the vertical line as a symbol, but use the color yellow or the equal sign, indicating what? Indicating that the luteal phase has a discharge. But take note, no longer slippery after the peak day, no longer wet.